EKU baseball team recently held their annual Diamond Dinner, and we're very fortunate to have the guest speaker, Marty Brennaman, the voice of the Cincinnati Reds, and we're very pleased now to have Marty join us for a few minutes and talk a little bit about his career and about some of the things that he loves, including baseball. Marty, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Dan. Thank you.
I know you're beginning your 49th year in broadcasting, and when you first got into the business, did you ever dream that you would have the career you've had?
No, I really didn't. And not only that, but I never dreamed when I got to Cincinnati in 1974 that in 2013 I'd still be holding the same position. This business is a very transient position, and guys feel that the grass is always greener, and more often than not, it's not. And I've been fortunate because every time I've been forced to make a decision about leaving and going, I've always decided to stay. Never regretted any decision I've made to stay in Cincinnati. For a guy who was born and raised in the South, I've spent well over half my life in the Midwest, and I really love this part of the country. And now I'm in a position where not too many guys in my business, guys that have had 35 plus years in the big leagues as a broadcaster with only one team, and there are not too many of them. So that's something that I'm very proud of, and you know, I'm going to, whenever it comes, I'm going to end my career exactly where I started it.
Well, certainly in this part of the country, Reds country, everybody knows you as the voice of the Reds, but what a lot of people don't know is college basketball is something that you've also done a lot of broadcasting.
Well, I was a real college basketball junkie. I mean, I'm into it bad. I still am. I read recruiting services and all that kind of stuff, and I'm embarrassed to tell people that, but I do. And I had a great run in college basketball. I did 11 Final Fours on the radio, and I did 15 or 16 regional finals in the NCAA tournament. Had some great games. Had the Duke-Kentucky game back in the early 90s when Leitner hit the shot. I know Kentucky thinks like he's the second coming of Satan. So I've done pro basketball in the old ABA, and for a couple of years I did the Indiana Pacers on television. I love college basketball. I truly do. But I got to the point, you know, at my age, jumping on and off airplanes 12 months a year. But ironically, there's a chance that I may go back and do some college basketball next year. I'm not certain yet, but there's a chance I will.
Well, you certainly have become a familiar voice to fans in this area. Fans like me have grown up listening to you on the radio, and my first memories of the Big Red Machine and the Cincinnati Reds.
You're not that old, are you?
Yeah, no, that's when I grew up. That's the Big Red Machine. 31 years you spent with Joe Nuxall,
yeah.
And I think the memories that people have from you guys on the radio are just incredible.
Well, of all the things that I've had, all the good things that have happened to me as a result of this job, the Baseball Hall of Fame, the Radio Hall of Fame, a lot of other stuff. The thing I'm most proud of is the fact that he and I were together for 31 years, and that's the longest tandem doing Major League Baseball in the history of broadcasting at the big league level. Jack Buck and Mike Shannon in St. Louis were 30 years, and Joe and I were 31. And that was a true marriage made in heaven. I mean, we were both left-handed. We got along famously from the very first time I met him on February 1st, 1974, in a photography studio in Dayton, Ohio. And we just had a blast. I mean, it was so much fun to work with him, and then in later years to play golf with him when we travel on the road. And they talk about icons in the city of Cincinnati, and people talk about Pete Rose and Oscar Robertson and some of the other ones. Nobody, and I mean nobody, was bigger than Joe Nuxall was. He was great with fans. I've never had anybody say one negative about him in all the years I knew him, and even the many years that have transpired since Joe passed away. So that's the one thing that I would not take anything for, is the 31 years that he and I spent together broadcasting Reds baseball.
Now there's some things you have become particularly famous for, one of which is the famous ending to a Reds win, and this one belongs to the Reds. How did that start?
Well, it happened about 2 weeks into the first season, and it was not planned. It was a spontaneous thing, and to the best of my recollection, it came at Riverfront Stadium, and it was either David Concepcion got a base hit in the bottom of the ninth or the bottom of the 10th or the 11th inning, and it just came out. Had not planned it or anything, and that night as I was driving home, I was thinking about the broadcast, and I thought, you know what, that's not too bad. Maybe I'll end every win. And fortunately, it was at a time when they were winning with incredible regularity. Even in '74, when they came out of nowhere and almost caught the Dodgers, only to lose the division, and then 75 and 76 they won it all. So it came at a great time. The only regret I have is that I didn't copyright the thing.
Oh, yeah.
There were other people who made a lot of money off that phrase, but I didn't make any of it off. But it's, if I have a legacy long after I'm gone, that's the thing that a lot of people will remember, that every time they win. And the funny thing is, there have been maybe a dozen times in the 39 years that I've done Reds baseball that because of whatever happened on the field, that I forgot to say it. And there have been about 12, maybe more than that. And people would call the radio station and say, is there something wrong with him? Is he sick? Is he not going to say it anymore? I'll never forget one night, God rest his soul, Ryan Friel, who just committed suicide a few weeks ago, playing the Cardinals and the ninth inning with 2 out. And they had the tying run and the lead run on base. And Albert Pujols hit a ball to right center field. And Ryan ran for what seemed like forever, and went up on the wall in right center field and made the catch. I was so stunned by the catch that I didn't say it, because it was the greatest catch I've ever seen by a Reds outfielder in all the years I've been around. And I just completely lost it and forgot to say it. And people started calling the radio station, want to know what the heck's happening.
Does it count as a Reds win if Marty doesn't say it? This one belongs to the Reds.
There were years when I had to write that phrase down on a file card, because they won so infrequently that I had to remind myself to say it.
Well, talking about that, 2 of the last 3 years, obviously, Reds are winning, so that's got to make it a lot more fun.
Well, it's a good team. The ownership that we have now, the Castellini ownership, he's an owner who wears his loyalties on his sleeve, and he makes no bones about the fact that he wants to bring a world championship to Cincinnati. And, in 2010, they win the division, and then Philadelphia beats them 3 in a row, and one of those losses was a no-hitter by Roy Halladay. And then, unfortunately, last year was just devastating. I mean, they win 2 games in San Francisco and play like world champions, and then they come home and they lose 3 in a row. And there were extenuating circumstances. Johnny Cueto went out in the first inning of his second game of the playoff, and Matt Latos was forced in off the bench and pitched brilliantly, and they won that game. But then they didn't have Cueto the rest of the postseason. They would have had him for Game 5. And then, of course, Votto coming back off of left knee surgery, came back, and it didn't come back early because they told him you can't hurt it anymore, but he had no strength in the knee, and it was his left knee, his push-off knee, that provided him all the power. He hit no home runs and drove in no runs. And so there were reasons why, but you expect that when you win 2 in a row on the road and you come home having not lost 3 games in a row at home all season and can't win one. But this is a better team, I think, this year than the one last year because of the trade they made with the Indians to get Shin-Soo Choo, a legitimate leadoff hitter with power and who can run. And then everybody gets to move out of that 1 and 2 spot. Now, Brandon Phillips can hit second rather than leadoff. And Zach Cozart, who hit second, can drop down to 7 in the batting order. This is going to be a very, very good team. And if Aroldis Chapman can make the transition from the bullpen to the rotation, I hate to think how good this team's going to be.
Let's talk a little bit more about why you're on campus for the event. I know you have always been a huge fan of baseball at any level and have helped out and supported college baseball wherever you can.
Well, this is one of the so-called lifebloods of Major League Baseball, is college baseball, I just think that this level of baseball, I get all hyped up every spring when the College World Series comes along. It's a great event. The networks do a great job of promoting it, and you can see now, college baseball once you really get into the season. You can see it all the time on some cable network. And I've spoken at a number of different college campuses. I was at Marshall a few years ago. I was down in Furman, South Carolina last year, and of course at Eastern. And it's a nice atmosphere. I love the college atmosphere, and I just think it's a real plus for me when somebody picks up the phone and says, "Hey, can you come and speak to our group?"
All right. Well, on behalf of Reds fans and Colonel fans both, we certainly appreciate you being here this weekend, and we have loved all the years listening to you on the radio.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Marty Brennaman, our guest, the featured speaker at the EKU Diamond Dinner held this past February in the King Johnson Ballroom.